What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? What's going on, gang? 4:15 on the dot for today's show. Short notice show. Didn't know exactly what time I get it started. Was going to think maybe 4:30, but figured I'd just, some days you just got to press the start button and dive into this stuff. Got the Sims run. The reason for all the confusion on top of, or not confusion, but the reason for just not being sure how long things were going to take. A little bit of spring basketball, obviously. Lots of question marks, lots of ins, lots of outs. But also, completely different slates from site to site tonight. 5 games on FanDuel, 8 games on DraftKings. Gigantic pain in the ass. So it's going to be an ugly looking show once we pull up the board. But we've got everything laid out for both. Got a lot to talk about. It's also going to be completely irrelevant by the time the show ends. The slate will be completely different than it is right now, given a bunch of questionables, whole bunch of variables. The Memphis Grizzlies play at 10 or 10:30, one of the late games. So enjoy that, DraftKings people. I'll try to remember to come back. The other night I missed one. Apologies. Friday night, I want to say. If you were playing the DK slate, I think it was DK, whoever had the late game on Friday, I forgot to come back and update one thing on the late thing. So every now and again, got to be on the ball. Got to keep up with the changes for those late ones. But I'll be here. I'll remember that. I'll also be at my computer doing some draft stuff tonight. Doing some free agents bidding for baseball tonight for the Big Keeper League. By the way, EMAC, if you're out there bidding tonight, let me actually DM. Let me take one quick moment here and DM our friend EMAC. Hey, just a heads up if you missed all the texts, emails, the bidding is tonight. There we go. So hopefully we get to see EMAC by Zoom a little bit later on. Love to have EMAC on a show one day, but I think he's still probably not supposed to do that. Is he on a lot of shows over there these days? I haven't seen him in a while, and I Zoomed with him the other day talking about our baseball stuff, but I haven't seen him on like a show in a while. Not that I'm watching any of their shows, but that's kind of what I mean. Haven't been watching the show, so I don't know if he's on them, but I haven't seen him do one in a while. EMAC was always a great host. Hits the plugs, gets us from point A to point B, stops me from rambling like I'm doing right now. Weekend NBA, okay. I'll have to tune in. I got to jump in one of those. I guess we just got through a weekend. We'll have next weekend. Maybe I'll see if I can jump in and shake things up in there. Just say hi. But anyway, Cujo's here. Monday's going well, Cujo. Hope yours is too. Nothing crazy other than dealing with this slate. Nothing too crazy. Trey's here. Looks like Trey's going to pop out and back in. Steven Leibowitz. What's going on, bud? Hit that like button or bear the shame of not pumping the tire for tea. Gigantic pain in the ass is what my kids call me, said Steven. EMAC is good people. I agree with you, Steven. Christopher's here. What's going on? Small quorum to start the show, but let's get things fired up here. There's the board. We're sorted by top 150 ownership on DraftKings right now. I wanted to get a look at that. It's one thing I check, just, ownership against how the slate is generally shaped. If I see a guy jump to the top of the board who's supposed to be super low owned by projections and we're getting them like crazy, then all of a sudden I have a question about it. And it gives me a chance to like rerun things and everything. But you can see the big differences slate to slate. Guys that we've got a ton of on DK, not necessarily on the FanDuel slate through some of these. Top owned guy on DK. But let's get back to our normal by win rates. This is going to be very largely the same. So we do have a couple of common pieces across the board. Some key spots that make sense on both sides, like Delano Banton, who's just been tearing it up lately. He looks pretty solid, and the price really hasn't gone that high. 51, 56, for what he's actually been doing, price is pretty reasonable. Karis LeVert, we're back to no Donovan Mitchell tonight. We'll get into the ins and the outs, but interesting spot for LeVert there. Going up against Indy, should be some pace, should be some scoring that gives a little bit of a boost to Cleveland. Indy on the other side of it, kind of running into a good defensive squad with Cleveland, so it's a rock and a hard place kind of a thing. Harrison Barnes just coasting through on like an is who he is kind of a situation on DK at 4,200. A lot of pieces from Boston are going to be important. A couple of the Knicks are going to be important. No OG Anunoby tonight. Knicks have been on a run holding opponents to low 90s scoring over their past handful of games. Sub 40% shooting. Defense has been on fire. But they are notably better when OG is on the court, which shouldn't be as bold a statement as I made it. But for DFS purposes, for our purposes, that renders on DK Precious Achiuwa at 5,300 with an expectation of playing a ton of minutes. I've only got him at 34, and we've seen him go up into the 40s. So I think there's upside from here, and he's already looking like the top play. Just looks like an important piece. But some of the other Knicks will be in here as well. A lot of Boston. So let's talk game environments. Let me pull that Pinnacle board up. All right. Starting with the Cavs and the Pacers. Pacers favored by 6.5 at home. 225 point total there. Not bad. Kind of right in the middle. Well, actually, on this one, we only go up to 225.5. So one of the actual highest scoring games in the middle of the range that we've seen games be in so far this season. But for today, that's basically top of the board. There's 225 in the first game, and then for the DK gamers, 225.5 in the Atlanta Lakers game at the end of the night. So on FanDuel, Cleveland Indy is our top total at 225. Then we go to Miami and Philly, low end game. Philly favored by 2 at home. 208 is the total there. Detroit at Boston. Boston with another pushover spot. Missing a few guys already. Might be missing more by the time we get to game time. We'll get into that in a second. But right now, Boston favored by 15.5. 223.5 point total there. Portland at Chicago. 8.5 points in Chicago's favor at home. 213.5. Minnesota at Utah. Minnesota favored by 6.5 on the road. 223.5 in that one. Should definitely see some parts from that one. The Utah side is a little bit funky, though, because they're going up against that good Timberwolves defense. So, not my favorite spot to find value, but we've got some price-based stuff to work with. New York and Golden State. Golden State favored by 6.5 at home. 211.5, another low total. Again, the Knicks been keeping opponents in the 90s. Without OG, we'll see what their offense looks like. We'll see what their defense looks like. But overall, they've been on a very solid run. Memphis at Sacramento. Sacramento favored by 10.5. Memphis is an absolute mess for who's available, who's alive, who's dead, who's going to be out there. They're also big underdogs. The total's 221.5. Obviously, some good pieces from the Kings side to work with, and we should find, I'm sure, a couple of values from Memphis. I'm seeing John Conchar up there near the top of the board. Harrison Barnes is right there. Malik Monk, Keegan Murray. So we're getting some pieces out of that game. And then Atlanta at the Lakers to end the night. Lakers favored by 9 at home. 225.5 points there. Lakers missing some guys, mostly guys who have been out. We've got both LeBron and AD questionable today. Not a probable questionable setup. Talking about the ins and the outs as of the most recent updates around 4 o'clock. Onyeka Okongwu is questionable. So right now he wasn't in projections. I was expecting him to just be out. He's missed a handful of games in a row. Got upgraded to questionable on the injury report, but I haven't had a chance to throw him any minutes. Maybe a minor impact. We'll see if we can find him, where he would be in how the slate's coming together. But potential minor impact in that late game. Kristaps Porzingis is probable. Bam Adebayo and Caleb Martin are both available. Questionables. Cade Cunningham, Simone Fontecchio, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. You see what I mean about the Celtics potentially looking a little bit different by the time the show's over. Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, Ashton Haggins, Matty Thybulle, Alex Caruso. Could be an important one from the Bulls. Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert, Monte Morris, couple important pieces from Minnesota. Lauri Markkanen, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Onyeka Okongwu, all questionable right now. Out Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Max Strus, Dean Wade, who's doubtful, Benedict Mathurin, Doug McDermott, Quentin Grimes, Usher Thompson, Sam Hauser, Drew Holiday, Al Horford, so you can see the missing pieces already from the Celtics. Sammy Hauser coming out of that game the other day when he was shooting the lights out. That's still made value for us DFS-wise, but coulda, shoulda gotten to an even higher tier. Not that he was unpopular enough to make it actually matter that much. It was just one of the foundational pieces of chalk that day really, really came through. Was that yesterday? I'm losing tabs on my days. So Sam Hauser, Drew Holiday, Al Horford, all out already. Continuing the outs, Tyler Hero, Nikola Jovic, Kevin Love, Josh Richardson, Robert Covington, Joel Embiid, DeAnthony Melton, Jaquavian Smith. So a lot of missing parts from that game. Malcolm Brogdon, Jeremy Grant, who's doubtful, Shaedon Sharp, Zach LaVine, Julian Phillips, Kobe White continues to be out. He's technically doubtful, but seems like he's not going to go. Patrick Williams, that's what doubtful means. Patrick Williams, Karl Anthony Towns, Darius Baisley, Jordan Clarkson, Kenny Lofton Jr., Brandon Clark, Luke Kennard, Scottie Pippen Jr., Derrick Rose, who's now retired, and I don't know why he's on the injury report anymore. Marcus Smart, Lamar Stevens, Yuta Watanabe, Vince Williams Jr., who's doubtful, and Zaire Williams. That's basically, again, half the Memphis roster, half the guys they're paying. Trey Lyles, Sasha Vezenkov, OG Anunoby, Mitch Robinson, Julius Randle, Cam Reddish, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, and Christian Wood are all out. This gets so silly. Just completely ridiculous around this time of year. Anyway, so that's what's creating this mess. Again, 5 games on FanDuel. Right, FanDuel, you're dealing with these 5 games. Nope, that doesn't work because I've got everybody in here. Right. FanDuel, you've got Cleveland, Indy, Miami, Philly, Detroit, Boston, Portland, Chicago, and Minnesota, Utah. Leaving out the 3:10 o'clock games. So the FanDuel slate ends at 9, 7, 7:30, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. So you do have some staggering there with the one game at 8, one game at 9. Construction-wise, if you're leaving a couple of pieces for swappability around those, there's already some very good pieces coming out of those 2 games anyway. But I do think it makes some sense to, maybe leave yourself some wiggle room, and especially if you're building, just a couple of lineups. If you're building 150, it just kind of takes care of itself pretty naturally. But if you're building just a couple of lineups, I think it makes some sense to leave some swappability in those last couple. On DraftKings, you've got the 3:10 o'clock games, Memphis, Sacramento, New York, and Golden State, and then at 10:30, Atlanta, LA. So on DraftKings, long wait all night. Actually, is there late swap on DraftKings? I didn't even check. I assume there is, but I didn't even think to check when I... Yeah, it looks like it's normal. DraftKings with a $4 100K to first. Yeah, I think we're fine. Somebody let me know if there's no late swap. But either way, DraftKings, obviously you're going to have a bunch of additional room to swap things around, and you've already got a ton of stuff coming out of those late games. So it's going to be an interesting one to talk through. Yes, the late. Yeah, thanks. And Steven points it out. Yeah, Hauser was what was he, 1 away from the Celtics 3-point record? Point Bane, maybe Goodwin. I'm so sick of the Goodwin thing, Chris. Christopher's asking Point Bane. Good game environment with Bane and Triple J back. Yeah, you like to see those pieces back at least. It makes them, gives them a couple of reasonable, good NBA bodies to work with. The Goodwin thing's driving me nuts, though. They've had a couple days where it's like just before the game, it's, oh, by the way, he is on our G League roster and he's not available tonight. I don't know if it's the reporting that's doing that. I don't know if it's the team that's doing that, but it's really sucked when they've had these 7, 8, 9 man games to have that where you've got him. All right, we're down to 9 guys. I've got him getting 26 minutes and oops, he's not available 2 minutes before lock. They've done it a couple times after lock too. Travis Wyndham's here. What's up, Trev? Trey has an arcade by his house called Back to the Arcade. It's pretty dope. Love a good arcade. There's one of those in down by where I grew up, by my parents' place, that I've only been to once, last summer, I want to say. A couple buddies and I were all back at our parents' houses at the same time for a weekend, so we got together and went out, had some drinks. I think that's what it was for. Oh, it was. We were supposed to go to a concert. The concert was canceled. That's what it was. That's why we were all there. Regardless, we all went to had a bunch of drinks and then we went over there all banged up and played a bunch of video games. But yeah, just a really cool old school. Just it's like a pay on a time kind of thing. So you pay for like a half hour and everything's just press button activated. But really cool. Love the old arcades. Outside of like boardwalks and stuff like that, I guess it's not really a thing anymore. They used to be like just in the city, like you'd see just there's a big ass place that's an arcade. Not anymore. Stephen Leibowitz visited my daughter in San Francisco. They have this great place, Muse Mechanic, with old pinball and video machines. Pinball's a whole other story. There's a whole like subculture for pinball. Been to the pinball world championships. A friend of mine was really good, has always been into pinball, my buddy JP. And then he, by just, scouring out places that had pinball machines back in the early 2000s in New York when we were, partying in the city and stuff, made friends with a bunch of people in the pinball culture and yada, yada. Every year out in Pittsburgh, there's this guy who owns the Pinball Hall of Fame, I guess it is. It's this giant, like, warehousey kind of a place that's just loaded with hundreds of pinball machines, and he runs the Pinball World Championships. So I actually knew a couple of people. One of them, this guy who called himself Storm, who was fancied himself a rapper. But he was actually really, really good at pinball. He was ranked top 10 in the world. Never won while I was there, but claims a bunch of various wins. And to tie it all back to the NBA, somebody that we saw there when we went out for the Pinball World Championships back in like 2004 or whatever in Pittsburgh, Todd McCulloch, former NBA player. Big pinball guy. So there you go. There's also a Pinball Hall of Fame in Vegas. But yeah, pinball's a whole weird subculture. Anyway, let's start talking about some basketball. As stated at the top of the show, and as we've experienced pretty recently, he's probably going to be pretty irrelevant after another half hour goes by or so. But we'll do the best we can to get through this thing. A lot of pieces always stay at the top of the board. It's just, what value emerges around them and how that changes. Like, you can go from I can pay for 1 star and 2 decent, upper mid-range guys and then a lot of flatness to now I can pay for 3 stars and just have scrubs in my lineup. So can definitely change things around. Hey, speak of the devil, look who it is. Mr. McPherson. EMAC himself, Canadian who played at the University of Washington. Go Huskies. Oh, McCulloch? It took me a second to realize who you were talking about. EMAC, did you get my DM? Bidding is tonight, you're aware? Hopefully. Looks like you responded, so yeah. I didn't respond to your responses, or these guys would have just been watching me chat. But yeah, looks like you responded, so bidding is tonight, my friend. So let's talk this mess through. Fortunately, we do have a couple common guys near the top of the board here when we sort to guards. Primary of which, Delano Banton, on FanDuel especially, 6.38 points per dollar is getting him into 75% of our top 150 lineups, a 54% win rate. He's just been a monster. Played nearly 42 minutes the other night, put up 44 FanDuel points, 0.95 per minute for the season. He's been overperforming that rate of late. We've got him for tonight's performance, giving him a little bit more, but not like crazy. I've got him at 1.02, which is kind of right around what he's been over the last 30 days or so since like mid-February. So pretty comfy with that spot. He looks great on DraftKings as well. He's a little bit higher priced against the DraftKings cap. So we're getting a little bit worse on points per dollar, but still 5.8 points per dollar, the top mark among guards on DraftKings. So makes a ton of sense that we're getting him in nearly 50% of the top 150 lineups, 38.53% win rate. I do believe that puts us ahead of the field on both sites on him. Yeah, his popularity is like right around what our win rate is on DraftKings. So we're getting a little bit more of them on DK. Looks like a good option there. And then on FanDuel, the win rate is a little bit higher than where the public's ownership is. And then our projected popularity, or at least the way that he landed in Sims, rather, in our sim here, was well ahead. Talking about 30 points on top of the field here. You can obviously leave some of that on the table if you want. All that's telling us is Delano Banton looks like a really, 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 really good piece of chalk today. If you take him out to the field, you get beyond the field. I recommend getting beyond the field on him. But once you're talking about a guy who's in like half of all lineups, that becomes a how much are you comfortable really, really loading up on guys kind of an issue. For basketball, it makes sense to take these percentages way, way high. So Delano Banton, it's Delano Banton day. Let's put it that way. Karis LeVert, we talked about him just kind of at the top of the show briefly, pulling 35% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 36% on DraftKings against basically matching win rates. 7,500 on FanDuel, 6,800 on DraftKings. Just really appropriately priced for the spot. Cleveland missing a number of different parts. Again, Cleveland without... the hell are they? Without Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Max Strus, and probably Dean Wade as well. So a lot of missing parts there. LeVert put up 46.1 in 32 minutes the other night, 1.03 per minute for this season. And I'm not really giving him all that much on top. Just looks like pretty good option. We're at 1.07 for today. They're picking up about 4 possessions. They're picking up some pace going up against Indy, going up against the second best offense in basketball and the worst defense, or thereabouts. I haven't looked at the how it landed recently. As of the last time I updated the team ratings in here, so call them the third, fourth, fifth worst defense. One of the worst defenses and one of the best offenses still. So definitely some room for a little bit of upside for Cleveland. I expect we'll see Jared Allen and Darius Garland in here. Garland somewhere on here. Yeah, he's right here. Actually, not that great. Garland, again, landing just kind of like what we've talked about every time he's come up lately, where we haven't seen the monster uptick outside of a couple of little spots. He's put up a lot of, like, these kind of games. That was with Donovan Mitchell in. But even with Mitchell out, we haven't really seen the big jump in a lot of spots for Garland. This would be a good spot to find it. It kind of makes sense that it would be a spot to look for it. I'm giving him 1.04 against his 0.98 today. Could be a little argument for a little bit more. I wouldn't be, put it this way, I don't know if I give him a little bit more just on spec of like good opportunity and the good game environment. But it wouldn't surprise me if Darius Garland went overperform this number and knock these percentages out of the box. So just a guy to keep in mind, $7,900 on FanDuel, $7,600 on DK from that quality player middle price tier kind of a range. It's not a bad option. If you're sitting there at I've got 79, technically Anthony Simons maths out better for 76, but there's nowhere else to put that 300. I don't know that it's this big of a gap necessarily between these two. Because I think Simons were at or about the ceiling as far as like not his ceiling, but his where the ceiling of where his median projection should go. Where Garland, I'm not totally sold that we are. So I think there's a little bit more room here, which then leads to obviously higher overall ceiling. And again, I'm probably not going to end up giving him anything more because he hasn't gotten there. But I do think that it's a little bit viable. So these are probably closer than they look. On DraftKings, it's already close. Because Simons is 77 versus Garland 76. But it's one to keep in mind for if you have that 300, I don't mind that pivot. Let's get back up to the top of the board and get back on track. Derek White looking good right now. Potential to look great if we get no Jalen. Potential to look even better, I think, if we get no Jalen and no Jalen, no Tatum. I haven't looked at what those numbers look like. But right now, just for the configuration that we've got, going up against Detroit, 7,700, both guard spots on FanDuel, pulling 30% of the top 150. On DraftKings, 7,100, both guard spots, 28% win rate, 32% of the top 150. Again, another guy that's one of the higher-owned players. We're slightly ahead of the FanDuel field. And yeah, a little bit ahead of both. Slightly ahead with win rate of where the field is, slightly ahead of public popularity. Don't mind that spot at all. EMAC getting praise in the chat if he's still here. Trey saying, loved his insights over the weekend. I was asking EMAC if you were around for weekend shows these days. I hadn't tuned in over there in a while. Travis Duarte, who's the most optimal star to build around? At all positions, assume you're talking, I'm pretty sure you're on DK, Trav. Let's go like this. We can make this a question and answer day with how broken these slates are if you guys want. I'm perfectly happy with that. All right, so we're AD pulling an 18.3% win rate, 21% of the top 150, but then you got Tatum right there. If he goes 15.8 and 25% of the top 150, so it looks like we got to a little bit more Tatum for a little bit less than AD, but AD won a couple more times than Tatum, if that makes sense. You've also got Darren Fox down here, looks pretty decent at 89 if you want to save a little bit more money. It depends on, what your price cutoff is for stars. Like, is Bam a star at, that's not Bam, 87? I mean, it doesn't look that good anyway. Is Jaylen Brown a star at 84? Probably not if we're talking about it by price, but like on talent he is. Yeah, I'd say your choices there are probably AD or Jason Tatum, and you could probably get them both. Be surprised if we don't have lineups with both. Let's see. Wow, these are ugly. There's Tatum. I'm not actually seeing a ton of AD at the very top here. I know you guys can't see what I'm looking at. In this one sim result, the first Tatum lineup is we're sorted by if we're looking at the top 150 and then looking sorted by average cash. The Tatum lineup, the first Tatum lineup slightly outperforms the first AD lineup. I'm just looking for ones where we've got them together. It looks like we are getting more of like AD other. Like this one's AD Jimmy Butler. That one's just AD and a bunch of mid-range guys. Yeah, I think depending what the salary savings on Tatum does for you, they're projected very, very similarly. Tatum going up against Detroit, total pushover spot. You do have a little bit of blowout risk there. In the Lakers-Atlanta game, it is a 9-point spread. It's a little bit less blowout risk, but it does, certainly still exist. And if you're going to AD, there's always the AD thing. That said, he's been a lot better about that this year, at least. Tatum perfectly capable of getting there, even if they do blow out Detroit. I think I slightly lean Tatum, especially given how we came up a little bit more in our top 150 lineups. In terms of raw popularity on DraftKings, it's another good spot we can check against. Looks like was AD way more popular? Yeah, we got a significant amount more. That makes me like Tatum, so that's a good deciding point. We're ahead of the field on both guys, but we're only a few points ahead of the field on AD, where we're nicely ahead of the field on Tatum. So it's like a decision point. I kind of like that. Obviously, on FanDuel, you're getting nearly 50% of Jason Tatum in your top 150. You're getting him with a 43% win rate, landing in the top 1% in 46% of our 50,000 sims. Tatum looks fantastic for 10,000 on FanDuel, both forward spots. just because we're obviously don't have either of those Lakers stars to work with. We don't have Sabonis to work with on that side. We do have AE. We don't have DeJounte Murray. We do have Tyrese. We don't have any of these guys. So our star selection is a lot more limited. We're winnowed down basically to Edwards, the two guys from Boston, if they play. And then Jimmy, Bam, Tyrese, Vooch, maybe. Triple J. You're getting really thin if we're starting to call DeAndre Ayton a star. He has been crushing it lately, though. Cade, maybe a burgeoning star. Now we're just throwing around adjectives on guys. Hopefully that helped. Running man getting lots of DeRozan on Sims. I get a lot of DeRozan on a lot of slates lately. Let's see where he came up here. There he is. 32% of the top 150 on FanDuel with a 23.7% win rate at 8,500. Small forward only. Had a bit of an issue with, I think it was yesterday. Over the weekend, the day where we had the dudes from Washington, the alternate Jay Champagne. What is it? Jared and Justin? Something like that. But the one from Washington was small forward. Butler from Washington. Baldwin from Washington was shooting guard. We had the value pieces, the Hauser value piece at small forward. So it was really, really concentrated. Like all the FanDuel values were coming out of guys that were small forward only, which was really annoying. But DeRozan fits into that position, obviously, at a different price tier. But what I'm saying is if you get that kind of a scenario again today, potentially a blocker with these guys where you're only getting one position. But he does look very, very good. You also potentially have that around Tyrese Maxey. Point guard only. Doesn't look nearly as good as DeRozan does. So just an important thing to think about with those single position guys from a price tier like this is sometimes they are blockers to those value plays, which can be good and bad, right? If you're looking to get around a value play, use a similar value from a different position that's a little bit less popular, then since there is a blocker, like let's say it was Sam Hauser and Champagne again, both small forward only, so that's blocked out. If you go away from one of those value guys and the field is very, very heavy on him, let's say you use the shooting guard value guy, then you pop DeRozan into that small forward spot at far lower ownership than he technically should be, given the dynamics of how his price and projection work at that position. So the field just won't be there for absence of being able to use the spot, not because he's not a good play. So that automatically enhances that play a little bit for me. Hopefully that makes some sense. On DraftKings at 8,300, both forward spots, 9% across the board basically. Looks like a good, solid is who he is type day, 5.05 DK points per dollar. Not a bad spot whatsoever for DeRozan. And certainly some upside there against Portland. A lot of days like this from DeRozan, though. Right around the 1.05 to 1.1 per minute. So you get what you pay for with DeRozan most days. He doesn't fully disappoint a lot of the time, but you do get a right around the median projection a lot of the time. Obviously, the missing parts enhance the situation in Chicago for everybody. Io should be in here somewhere as well. Let's get back to guard, see if we can find Io. I've been getting a lot of Io lately. Where is he? There he is. Yeah, FanDuel. Right back to Io DeSunmu. DraftKings, he looks great as well. I got to resort this. I'm realizing we're still sorted by price. That's why everything's so funky. Let me do that. So Io looks great on both sites. He's been playing really, really well. You can see it's 0.78 per minute for the season. But over the last 30 days, basically since the start of the calendar year, he's been lighting it up in the 0.9 plus range. So he's just been really good. You can see the... let me find him again. You can see the last time out, 40 and a half minutes, 53 FanDuel points. So it's been a big, big uptick that it's somewhat accounted for. His price has gone up, but his price isn't quite high enough. Both guard spots on FanDuel, 55% winner, 68% of my top 150 over on the across Sims, and then on DraftKings at 6,500. Both guard spots, 24.9% win rate, 25% of the top 150. Even at the higher price against the lower cap, Ayo's still making sense on the DraftKings slate. It's kind of like Banton, where there's been an appreciable uptick. Looks like DraftKings is on top of it a little bit better, having both of them higher against their lower cap than they are on FanDuel. Banton and Ayo are going to be in my lineup tonight. I'll tell you that much. I'll probably have Banton at a point guard and then Ayo at a shooting guard. But the flexibility on Ayo helps. That said, you've got Peyton Pritchard as a point guard only play. So probably, as I'm eyeballing this, I can tell you it's probably going to look like Banton, Pritchard, and Ayo, which I think is the exact same configuration as over the weekend. Perfectly happy going back to that again. Speaking of Pritchard, there's plenty for him to do with the missing bodies and potentially could be more. Projected at 30 minutes for just 4,200. Looks fantastic on both sites. 19.8% winner, 16% of the top 150 on DraftKings at 4,800. Another guy cheaper on the FanDuel slate. Obviously, again, I'm talking about them like they're the same, so there are some price mechanics because the FanDuel slate's got 5 games and the DraftKings slate has 8 games. So some of that is baked into the mechanics of these lower prices on FanDuel, higher prices on DraftKings. But regardless, Peyton Pritchard looks a little bit better on FanDuel, 35% across the board. On DraftKings, that ownership is a little bit below the field. The field is like right here where his win rate is. We're just shaving off a few shares of him. I have no issues putting those back. If you're building out a bunch of lineups, he looks like a terrific play. And I think it's another one of those spots where blowout situation, injury, et cetera, down the line, there's probably only upside for more from Peyton Pritchard in terms of minutes, in terms of role and expectations. He could go out and underperform and be completely terrible. That's always on the board. But in terms of like trajectory, there's not a lot of downside from here for Pritchard. It's probably all upside. So I like that spot quite a bit. Definitely a focal point on the FanDuel slate. Going back up to the top here, we talked about Derek White. Sammy Merrill, 4,700. The price works. 4,200 on DraftKings. It works a lot better over there. Shooting guard only, 5.49 points per dollar. Has him in 25.7% of winners. 32.6% of the top 150. Again, a lot of missing bodies in Cleveland. Got him at 28 minutes tonight. He played 28 minutes the other night. Put up 25 FanDuel points. At 4,200, if you get just even, this kind of a game, it's probably that exact result. He's all right. It's not going to completely tank you, just where he's priced. But if we get any emergent spots around him that are in the threes, there could be a little bit more. I'm just looking for where those might come from. Maybe not really at the guard spot. That might be the best price-driven guy. Because I don't really see a situation where the Knicks are going to suddenly play Alec Burks more than 18 minutes at 33. 35 for Keon Ellis already at 24 minutes. Probably not much uptick there. So maybe that is just the best price-driven play at the guard spots. Moody, nothing. Craig Porter. If we somehow got news on like that, but that's not expected. Yeah, so at 42, Sammy Merrill got to knock down those threes. We looked at it the other day, still in the 40s, I believe. Yeah, 41.2% from 3 on the season, taking 5.7, making 2.3 a game. Obviously, we're fairly low end across the board overall, 15% assist rate, 5.8% rebounding rate. So Sammy's got to take more threes than his average, which in this situation he should, and he's got to knock them down for you. Otherwise, you're just going to float through with around this kind of a, probably lower than this kind of score. Call it an 18. John Conchar, 23% of the top 150, 25% of the winners for 4,700 shooting guard and small forward. Are reasonable if you've got the $500. You can look at these guys as pivots from one another at the shooting guard spot, and Conchar gives you an additional small forward eligibility to work with. You can obviously have them both in the same lineup. Plenty of price-based value there. Not on the FanDuel slate, obviously. Put up just 16.9 in nearly 25 minutes the other night. A couple more minutes for him available right now. We will also see what the hell Memphis looks like by the end of the night. I just absolutely hate that team at this point. Malik Monk, another player I've been getting a fair amount of. Unfortunately, not on the FanDuel slate today. I like Monk. He's a shooter, 24.7% usage rate, fairly active out there, 1.10 FanDuel points, 1.14 DraftKings points for the season. Giving you multi-position eligibility on DraftKings at 6,400, landing in 22% of winning lineups and 17% of the top 150. Seems like a reasonable spot to keep in your pocket if you're building a bunch of lineups. Have some Malik Monk shares. At worst, you get a 10 o'clock pivot that you can move around to those other spots if something opens up. You maybe have him baked in there with somebody else, so you can move two spots, have one cheap and one expensive, so you can move over to, let's say one of the big Lakers doesn't play. All of a sudden, you're going to want to get two additional LeBron or AD. So I think he's a pretty good-looking piece that you can just use, obviously, in that late game, or one of those late games. And at worst, he is a fairly priced option that will be a good spot that you can pivot in and out of. There is a 3-game slate for these late games, by the way, on FanDuel. Over there at 4.68 points per dollar. Not sure how well he would hit the board, honestly. He probably would hit, with just 3 games, but doesn't look like the greatest option. That said, not that many great looking spots. Maybe DiVincenzo, 67. A little bit better. DiVincenzo would probably hit a little bit harder. 4.86 points per dollar for 67 at the same positioning or similar positioning. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the 3-game late slate on FanDuel. Talk about something nobody wants to talk about. Oh my God. Keon Ellis, De'Aaron Fox. Ellis, I mentioned, 3,500 is just functionally a very low price. It's not like he's projected high. It's just price driven. But he did land in 15% of winners in that sim, 25% of the top 150. I have no idea where he's on. Let's see. He's pulling lower ownership than the win rate, lower ownership than the top 150 exposure that we're getting to him. I've got him for a few more minutes than they do, though. If they had him... Let me see. Do I owe somebody on Sacramento a couple of minutes? Let me see. It's probably a situation where it's just they threw a couple scrap minutes where I get the ownership. Probably threw a couple scrap minutes down the board to somebody. $29, $28, $27, back to $18 and $17 3 games ago. But if somebody... Changed there. Herder missed one of those. He's back for... Okay, Herder played only 16 minutes in that one. Maybe I cut 2 minutes off of Keon. At 3,500, it'll still hit the board fairly well, but it'll probably put him back a little bit more in range where, like, this is our top 150, and then this is our win rate. This is essentially where the field is. Field's getting there a little bit. He is a functional value play. I think 24, I might be a little bit aggressive on those minutes, though. I'm going to highlight him so that I remember to go back to it. De'Aaron Fox, I just know looks good. 14% win rate, 14.8%, 20% of our top 150 for 8,900. 1.27 DraftKings points per minute. 44.9 in 36 minutes the other night. At 8,900, it's not quite enough. Little bit more. Just a little bit more. But obviously we're buying a ton of usage. Obviously, we're buying a very, very good player for 8,900, 100 less than Jalen Brunson, who also looks pretty similarly good. Their win rates are very close, but we got to less Brunson against the win rate, and I expect against the field as well. Yep. Taking about 5-6 points away from the field's popularity on Brunson, which I think makes sense. You know, he's extremely, extremely capable of going out there and dropping nearly 60 in just a regular 36-minute stint, even against this Golden State team. But you know, we've seen it where when there's a crunch, like adding OG back into that situation freed things up a little bit. When it's a little bit crunched, everybody can focus on Jalen just a little bit more. It becomes a little bit harder for him to do his thing. So I like him slightly less than Fox here. I like the matchup better for Fox. But Jalen looks very good. I think you can play them together if you want to. They obviously both project out great. I don't think playing them together is necessarily the optimal construction for this slate by a long shot. But they're both looking pretty good. Jalen, I briefly mentioned him when we were looking for stars. At 8,400, that's a very good price for Jaylen Brown. You really just need him to take the court, and he's going to at least deliver around this with potential upside for more. Didn't play the last game. I had a big one, I want to say 2 games ago. Has taken, he's Robin to Tatum's Batman, obviously. But on a lot of nights, Robin can save the day, and Jaylen Brown has, so I have no issues getting to him for 84 on DraftKings. I think that's actually a pretty decent looking play. Does look like we got to him a little bit less than our win rate, which probably puts us below the field. Where'd he go? There he is. Yeah, a little bit below the field, but no real haircut there. Feels like at this kind of a level. So our win rate's slightly below the field. Our exposure's slightly below the field. You rerun this a few times. A point here, a point there, a minute here, a minute there. It's 15% Jalen, no issues with it. 10% Jalen, no issues with it. And if the situation changes around him, obviously there's potential upward trajectory on that one as well. On FanDuel at 8,700, small forward and shooting guard, just looks like a very strong play. 24% of winners, 21% of the top 150. Especially if you're not going to Tatum, if they're both out there. If you don't go to Tatum in your lineup, I think it makes a lot of sense to consider it a situation where I want one or the other, especially if I'm building 1 to 3 lineups. This is entirely price driven. Played 18 the other night, put up 18. It's been kind of in the doghouse. At 33, if he gives you this, it's there, but I don't think there's very much ceiling. Like, I don't really see many scenarios where Alec Burks plays more than 18 minutes. I can see plenty where he plays less than 18 minutes. And I don't necessarily know that he's going to come out and give you a point per minute anyway. Low end kind of a scoring game. He's been a 0.89 per minute player, 0.94 on DraftKings. Again, it's very, very just about that $3,300 price and how it comes through the wash with that sim. I really don't like that spot that much. And he's pulling. Jeez. We're at half the field at that 6%. His win rate's right in this territory. Or his exposure's right in this territory. I am fine with the Alec Burks undercut. It's functionally okay. Like that 3,300 is a lever over these guys in terms of what it helps you buy. 900 could be pretty valuable on that DraftKings slate for sure. Getting an Alec Burks share instead of a Sam Merrill share. And the downside for Sam Merrill is not all that dissimilar from the downside for Alec Burks. Like I said, Sam Merrill, he's projected for 10 more minutes, but he's absolutely got to knock down his threes. You get a bad shooting night from Sam Merrill, he could just as easily tank a lineup as Alec Burks. So I get it. I just really don't have much faith in there being any kind of ceiling beyond like 18 points. And even at 33, like I want him in the 20s. Simon's definitely playable on FanDuel. 18% win rate. Looks like we got him less than that, though. We got him well below the field. About half the field. A little bit less than half the field. 1.0 on the nose for the season. Put up just about that. Slightly outperformed it in 35.8 minutes the other day. 7,700 on DraftKings. Just looks like an also-ran. 9% of winners, but only 1% of the top 150. Probably below the field there as well. Yeah. Field's around there on Simons. So we're significantly below the field on Anthony Simons on the DraftKings slate. Which I think makes sense. I mean, given all these good options at guard, given the matchup against Chicago, not a great matchup for them. I don't mind leaving a little bit of Anthony Simons there to the field. And it's not like he's really, crashing through the top of the slate anyway. Alexander Walker, moderately playable on FanDuel, a little bit more so in terms of the win rate on DraftKings, but we got to him in the same mid-single digits kind of a level on both. Obviously, there is a little bit of upside for the Minnesota guys going up against that pushover Utah team. So maybe a little bit of life there, but 0.72 per minute, 13.9% usage. A lot of games like this from Alexander Walker, 26.5 minutes, 15 fantasy points. A lot of disappointment from Alexander Walker potentially on a slate where, honestly, you just don't really need to go in that direction. If he was even 42, put him at the same price as Sam Merrill, maybe I get a little bit more. He's fine, but he's not really a priority, and less so on FanDuel. I talked about Garland. I do see, potentially a little bit of additional upside for Darius Garland. Cade, just, not a great matchup going up against Boston, but obviously has loads and loads of talent, plenty of opportunity. If you got the version of Boston that doesn't have one of the two primary guys or, let alone both of the primaries, it's not like this is the same Boston team overall. They're still very good, even with their second unit primarily taking minutes, but I could see a little bit of unaccounted for upside on Cade. Put up 38.3 in 32 minutes the other night. He's been at 1.16 FanDuel for the season, 29% usage rate at 8,500. The issue on FanDuel for me is I've got multiple value guys that are point guard only, so that's one of those cases of that I was talking about before, of a little bit of a blocker there. If I'm going Banton and Pritchard at those point guard spots, I can't flex them out of there, and I can't flex Cade into a point guard spot. So it's kind of the same issue as with Garland. Either one of these guys, if you went, again, away from one of these, and these guys are rendered lower owned by the public because of those positional blockers, if you're getting your value somewhere else, then these are guys to consider at low ownership just because of their ceiling. So just because these guys sim out low, sometimes you got to, consider the mechanics of the slate. Like, why do they end up low? Why do they end up low owned by the public? It's not necessarily because they're in bad spots, although I don't love the spot for Cade. Garland arguably in the better of the two spots. But just the mechanics sometimes knock guys down below, so you can gain a little bit of advantage if you're pivoting things around already. That's not to necessarily say that you want to start your construction that way. Like saying, all right, I want to rule out one of the best plays on the slate in favor of an expensive guard who doesn't sim out well just because I can gain a few points in that spot. I'm saying if you're already on a construction that's, I would probably leave Banton in and get away from Pritchard in that situation just because of the math difference there. But if you're already trending away from Pritchard for whatever reason, then that's where you maybe consider that. I wouldn't make that the decision point. They both look very playable on DraftKings, but not a priority. At 7,900, Cade does come up at 13% in our top 150 against the 7% win rate. Significantly more than we got to Darius Garland and higher than the win rate. I'm going to guess probably a little higher than the public, which is not on here anymore. Yeah, a little bit higher than the public. It's negligible. There's a little push-pull there, depending on how much exposure you want to K, but there's a little bit of additional room on top of where the public's at. Let's look for some different pieces here. Conley, perfectly fine, kind of in his who he is situation, below 5 points per dollar, but landing in 12.8% of winners, 11% of our top 150. On DraftKings, he's an afterthought on a fairly deep slate at 5,800. Tyrese Maxey looks all right on FanDuel, single digits across the board. Just a 4% win rate, but we got him 14.6% of the time. Point guard, shooting guard for 8,600 on DraftKings. That's a surprise. Well ahead of the field on Maxey. It's like 3x. The field is in the territory of our success rates. That might just be a case of some money to spend and a player with a bit of a ceiling. Yeah, it's probably, the same way that we're getting for some shares of De'Aaron Fox. 20% of our top 150 at point guard for 8,900. There's probably a little bit of a rotation there between Fox, Maxey, any other high-priced guys. Jalen Brunson. But that's interesting. We got a little bit more exposure to Maxey than we did to Brunson, despite a lower win rate. %10 win for Neesmith, but didn't get that much of him in the top 150, probably below the field. 21% winner for Colin Sexton. 15% of the top 150 on DraftKings. He didn't really come up all that much at all. Low single digits across the board. Interesting looking play at 7,300 on the FanDuel slate, though. Shooting guard, point guard eligible. 37.4 and 30.6 minutes the other night. A solid 26% usage, and where are they at today? We have no Clarkson. That's basically the big impact there. But no Clarkson tonight. I've got Sexton just let's see. Slightly below his season-long production for the matchup. Not a good matchup at all going up against Minnesota. But out of all the guys on Utah, he's the one I've got kind of the most near his expected production. Could also see a little bit of an uptick just rate-wise if we don't get Markkanen. I've got Markkanen in right now. He's still questionable. So potentially a little tiny bit more for Colin Sexton to do. I'm not sure if it would come through. I would have to check it. And then there's always the Minnesota factor there. Obviously not a direct positional situation with those two, but carrying the scoring load essentially is what I'm talking about. Terry Rozier is who he is, kind of a spot. Anthony Edwards, 11% winner, but just 6% of the top 150 on FanDuel. Not relevant to the DraftKings slate really at 10K. At 10-3, though, on FanDuel, the win rate at least is all right. Puts us below the field. We're roughly half the field. I think I checked this before. Roughly half the field on FanDuel, and again, not really relevant on the DraftKings slate at all. But another player with plenty of ceiling. Put up 64.5 FanDuel points in 35 minutes the other night against a terrible Utah defensive team. You can absolutely angle Anthony Edwards in an argument to hit that kind of a level again. It's just where we've got him against the price. Doesn't look great the way this slate clicks together. Kelly Oubre, 13% winner, 4% of the top 150 on FanDuel. All these guys that I'm talking about now are just not on the board on DraftKings right now. Duncan Robinson, 8% winner, 5% of the top 150 on FanDuel. Those are the only two other outliers. Let's jump to forwards. I'm doing my best, guys. I know I'm jumping around a little bit. Doing my best to keep up with some of this. Catch back up with the chat real quick as we switch positions here. Yeah, Steven, exactly. The 5 game versus 8 game makes it hard to judge comparatively. I like Pritchard a lot today. Yeah, I agree with all of that. Need the return of baseball and to put this tank fest behind us. Here, 8 game. Running man's off to get the kids. That was like 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago. I appreciate him hanging out. Appreciate all you guys hanging out. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, all those good things. If you're not following at rotoscouts on Twitter or X, hit the little follow thing there. And follow the at rotoscouts. It's where the show announcements go up. I try and send out the links to the projections. Obviously, there's going to be more coming when baseball starts rolling. So, and definitely more variability in when we're doing shows and stuff. So, might pay to follow the at rotoscouts. And if you happen to follow it and you see something pop up, hit the little heart thing on it and then retweet it, re-exit for me. Just help spread the word. Find some other good people out there. Bring them into the fold here. Bankroll theory. Win rate is just the in the 50,000 sims, courtesy of our pals over at Ace Mind. So I run a set of sims with the projections. It runs that 50. It generates a field of lineups and then runs it the slate 50,000 times. And these win rates are the percentage of times across those 50,000 lineups that guys were in the winning lineup for that slate. Right. So it runs it. Iteration number 1. Karis LeVert was in that winner, so that's iteration 2. He was in that winner, but iteration 3 he wasn't, and it goes on and it does 10, and he's in, every third lineup or thereabouts. So it's just how often they appear in the winning lineups across 50,000 sims, and then the top 150 ownership is in that same set of 50,000 sims. Our top 150 performing lineups at the end of the sims after the 50,000 iterations. What 150 lineups, if I was going to throw in 150 lineups, which 150 out of the 40,000 or whatever it generated for the field, which 150 performed the best? The top 150 ownership is how many times that player appears in those top 150 lineups. So again, Karis LeVert would be in like 1 out of every 3 of those top 150 lineups. On FanDuel, you'd have Alex Caruso in 67% of our top 150 lineups. Trey like 7 Fournier. Schmabs has him for almost 22 minutes and close to 18 DK points. Yeah, Fontecchio is questionable there. I just don't like Evan Fournier. I got him at 16 minutes, but 13 DraftKings points. Oh, 22 minutes. I had that backward in my head. In 22 minutes, yeah, I can see 18 points. I just, right now, I'm not giving him 22 minutes. I honestly don't know where they're... Unless I missed something here. Let me see. Ooh, he went 31 in their last game? I did not catch that. I'll put a little reminder on it to take a look at it. I don't think I'm going into the 20s unless we lose Fontecchio, maybe. I did miss that he played 31 that last game, though. Now I'm curious. Detroit. First man off the bench, too. Direct sub for Ivy. Then Ivy came back. He played alongside Ivy. Then started the second quarter alongside Ivy. Then he subbed out for Fontecchio. Fontecchio played the rest of the second, the entire third. Fournier came back in halfway through the third for Ivy again. And then, all right, he went to 31 because he played the entire fourth quarter. Ivy didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. That's what it is. Cade and Fintecchio were questionable. There's nothing about Ivy on here. Were they just getting lit? Is that what it was? That was a 104-101 game, and they played Evan Fournier in the entire fourth quarter? What happened to Jaden Ivey in this game? Just foul trouble? 2, 3, 4. Yeah, all right. I guess Jaden Ivey got halfway through the third quarter and picked up his fourth foul and then never came back? Is that all that happened? I'd be wary about the Fournier play. Like I said, he played a 12-minute stint in the fourth quarter. He played the entire fourth quarter last night. Like I said, I'll keep him flagged. I don't know, though. I think we need to lose a body or two from Detroit to see him get back anywhere near that territory. And we're sorted to forwards already. Great. And it's 5:21. Whew. All right. Let's get back on track. LeBron projects out really, really well today. He's been rolling in the 1.4 territory. 9% win rate, 7% of the top 150. Again, both him and AD are questionable today. AD was looking a little bit better between the two. But LeBron looks very, very playable. And as I've said kind of throughout the season, if LeBron's ever not popular, I'm always happy to get there. I'm always happy to take a few additional shares from the field. He's in the high single digits right now, kind of right in this territory. So it looks like one of those spots. If I'm not grabbing AD, I might grab a share or two of additional LeBron. No issue with it. Easy enough matchup. 10-3, both forward spots. I don't dislike the LeBron play. I think it makes sense that he mass out here given the price tag. But there's always a little bit more ceiling on LeBron. Tatum just looks like a great play on the FanDuel slate and a very strong play on the DraftKings slate. At 9,900, we got to him in 25% of our top 150 against a 15% win rate. So we're a little ahead of the field there. We're a lot ahead of the field here at 47% of our top 150, 43.8% winner for Tatum on FanDuel. Just need him to take the court, basically. That said, I could, maybe see in a blowout situation. They're on a back-to-back. They went 130-104 over Washington yesterday. Tatum, Horford, Holiday all sat the entire fourth quarter. Tatum played 26-6 in that one, and he still put up a 56.2 on the FanDuel scale. So that's kind of an example of, when we talk about even if they do blow that team out, Tatum's probably done his work in three quarters. He basically did for you there. Do you want more? Sure. Would there have been additional ceiling, and would Tatum have gotten to 75 FanDuel points if they rolled him out there for another 6-8 minutes? Probably, given the way he was going. But you'll still take that 56 too. So I think even in a disaster scenario, and given that he didn't play the entire fourth quarter last night, even on a back-to-back, I don't think the back-to-back now necessarily factors as strongly into that. Maybe if they're up 12-8, 12-10, whatever, maybe he doesn't see the entire usual fourth quarter run. I think it lessens that edge a little bit. LeVert, we've talked about, looks good on both sites in the mid-30s across the board. Conchar, we've talked about. Alex Caruso, point guard and shooting guard on FanDuel, shooting guard and small forward on DraftKings. 24.4%, 14% of the top 150. We talked about him already. Looks like a monster on FanDuel, though. 54.1% winner. 67% of the top 150 for 6,000 at both guard spots. Gave us about a point per minute the other night. It's a little bit of an uptick over his season-long number. All of this is assuming no Kobe White, who's still doubtful, or at least as of the last time we checked, injuries was still doubtful. I've got Caruso returning back to about the 1.0 territory. He's been in kind of that range and not really a difficult opponent against Portland here. So I like the Caruso spot pretty much as I like the Io spot. I think you can absolutely have both of them. I think you can have both of them probably and DeRozan depending on the fit overall. Malik Monk, we've already gone over. Jaren Jackson, Triple J, not on the FanDuel slate. Just a 0.05% winner. What the hell are we sorted by on DraftKings? Just a 0.05% winner. Doesn't look like he's all that relevant to the DraftKings slate either at 8,400. Just better options available. Obviously a good point per minute player, but not a great point per minute player this year. We lost him to the bottom of the board now. No, the actual bottom of the board. So down to 1.18 per minute on the DraftKings scale for the entire season. A little bit of good news like we were talking about before with Desmond Bane coming back, adding another NBA body to that team. But they're just a mess. At worst, or possibly at best, Jaren Jackson's looking like an $8,400 placeholder that if you ended up playing him for $8,400, it's okay. Like you're obviously not taking a guy who's going to most nights give you 12 DraftKings points. He'll give you that 35 to 40. So even if you get him and stuck with him, these sim rates aren't good. It's not where you want. But in terms of just the raw points, you'll still have some raw points scored there. But maybe at best right now, he's just a placeholder for swapping things around in those later games. There are obviously better options to use for that. So Precious, again, with no OG tonight. Full expectation of a return to a ton of minutes for Precious. I've got him just at 34. We've seen him play well into the 40s. So I think there's plenty of ceiling here for Precious Achiuwa. 0.94 per minute for this season. Has been playing mostly great since joining the Knicks. Total throw into that trade, but earned his stripes very, very quickly here in New York and seems to love playing here. Who else? Harrison Barnes. 4,200 for Harry Barnes. It's not a terrible option. He's a 0.68 per minute player. 14.8% usage. But can give you reasonable output. Plays a bunch of minutes. So his low rates tend to add up when he plays 36 minutes. You get 28 FanDuel points for your 4,200. It works out. It's never a strong faith play. There's a lot of disappointing nights on that same roller coaster with Harrison Barnes. But you can get the good nights out of him. You can get better than the 0.68. You can get him into the 0.8s, the 0.9s. At 4,200, it's not a bad option at both forward spots. 31% win rate, 38% of the top 150. Definitely a mixer at worst for value. Slow-mo. Slow-mo night again, too. These FanDuel lineups are going to look familiar and ugly. So slow-mo's going to be in there probably. Again. Came out and gave us a good one the last time. 31.2 minutes. Put up 32.5. That's the good version of him. Around the point per minute guy. When I go to him, he reverts to the extremely low usage and terrible version of him. And I'm probably going to have him tonight. So word of the wise. But on FanDuel, 52% win rate, 61% of the top 150. Just looks kind of unavoidable there. And again, they're just going up against a pushover of a Utah team. So with that in mind, hopefully he would ride that to a little bit of a round point per minute type success and be fine. At 5,500 on DraftKings, both forward spots, 23.4% winners, 26% of the top 150. Definitely a very relevant mixer over there at worst and looks pretty good, but unavoidable on FanDuel. Keegan Murray looking pretty strong. 5,500 there. There's a 0.85 per minute player, 17.5% usage rate. Just as a direct pivot, which is what made me pause there for a sec. 5,500 at the power forward. Keegan Murray over Kyle Anderson. Can make a reasonable argument for it. They're at the same per minute output for the season. Keegan Murray a little bit more usage. They project almost exactly the same. I suspect the positional flexibility is what got Slow-Mo into a few more of these lineups. 26% of our top 150 versus 19%, 18.9% win rate versus 23%. But you can see the projection, Keegan Murray technically slightly higher. I would bet that his standard deviation number that I used is slightly higher. So that positional flex is interesting. It's having an appreciable impact on the comp there. But the point being that Keegan Murray, if you're not comfortable with slow-mo on DraftKings, a reasonable pivot. Malik Monk for 64. We talked about when we went over guards. Looks very good on that DraftKings slate. Jaime Jaquez. Missing pieces for Miami. Again, Miami without... Oh, who the hell was it? No Hero still. No Jovic. No Kevin Love. No Josh Richardson. So Jaime Jaquez, he went out and played nearly 35 minutes the other night, put up nearly 30 FanDuel points. He's been a 0.81 per minute guy, 18% usage under normal circumstances. And we've seen some decent upside games. They're comfortable giving him plenty of run. He averages 30 minutes anyway. So we can see an additional 5-6 minutes on top. I like the Jaime Jaquez spot for 5,200 on FanDuel. 28.7% winner. We got to him 40% of the time. On DraftKings, 18% winner. We got to him about that number. Against the field, it's probably right in line. Yep, almost exactly with the field on both sides on Jaquez. Actually, no, we're ahead of the field on FanDuel. We're like right with the field on DraftKings. We're good little chunk of points ahead of the field. Field's in like that kind of territory. So I like Jaquez. It's going to be an ugly looking FanDuel lineup that I'm just piecing together in my head. I hope I find some stars on the back end. Okoro lands reasonably well on FanDuel. Tatum we've touched on already. On DraftKings, Jalen Johnson looks pretty solid, 17% winner, but we only got him 7% of the time. Another piece from that last game. It's about half the field. We've also got a Kongwu potentially coming back. He's questionable today. Right now, not in projections. Obviously, that's more of an impact, directly to the minor value that Bruno Fernando has been giving us at cheap prices from the backup big man spot. But potentially a rate impact that I hadn't explored there. But again, we're already getting Jalen like half the field. I think this is about the ceiling that we would see. I don't think there's a scenario where I give him much more than this. I could see him maybe coming down a little bit. Josh Hart looking at worst playable on FanDuel. Again, another Nick who should benefit from OG's not being there. He's playing tons and tons of minutes basically regardless of scenario. Played 38.9 the other night, put up 32 FanDuel points. Didn't quite get us there. Comes with the usual warnings that Josh Hart tends to get his fantasy points in odd ways. Pieces together good FanDuel scores. He's a great rebounder for his size. He's not a fantastic shooter. I think he's still, where is he? Yeah, 31.8% from three. But he's given us some, 10-10-10 type of games. He's given us some, 9 points and 20 rebounds and 5-6 assists kind of games. He's been all over the place, but he's stitched together a couple triple doubles since the start of the year. He's had big upside spots. 7,200, not the comfiest price in the world, and it looks like we got him below the win rate on DraftKings. I'm sure that'll be below the public. Yep, below the public, but not crazy so. Just a handful of points. If you wanted to take him at the same rate as the public, even a little bit more, it's a give and take with Josh Hart. I think at this point of the season exactly what you're gambling on with Josh Hart shares there. Jalen, we've talked about. George Niang. Somebody mentioned George Niang. Might have been Trey. I think Trey mentioned George Niang in the Discord. I'm with you, Trey, on DraftKings at 4,500. That's not bad. Again, a lot of missing pieces for Cleveland. Got him at 28 minutes. He put up just 21 FanDuel points in 28 minutes the other night. 0.73 per minute on FanDuel. 0.77, a little bit better on DraftKings. Landed in Nearly 14% of winning lineups, 12.6% of the top 150. At worst, he looks like a very functional, like not into the threes, but with the value that we've got today, very functional, like middle of the value tier type of a value tier play. That was clunky. On FanDuel, not so much for Niang, by the way. 5,200 power forward only. Doesn't really do it. At 45 with both forward spots on DraftKings, there's a lot more functionality there. Tamani Kamara looking all right on FanDuel. 4,900 both forward spots. Plenty of minutes. I don't love throwing him at that Chicago front court. 24.7 FanDuel points in 33.6 minutes. He's that kind of performer. Low usage, low per minute numbers. On DraftKings, I'd rather have this. 4,400 both forward spots. When I say I'd rather have this, like, a high single-digit win rate, a mid-single-digit exposure in the top 150, and you take a few shares of them and don't really have to worry about it. At the FanDuel numbers, I have to at least consider him with fewer options available, which I don't love with that player necessarily. He has gotten there a few times, but not the best option on the board, and not my favorite game environment to attack. DeRozan we've talked about, but again, on FanDuel, looks very, very good. 23.7% winner, 32% of the top 150. On DraftKings, just an also-ran, but a strong also-ran. Never mind taking some DeRozan shares. Pascal Siakam, 13% across the board on FanDuel. I don't mind that spot. Another one where I don't love the idea, but it's not a fully healthy Cleveland team either on the other side. Out of the indie pieces, he's one of the ones that's standing out a little bit. Put up 54 FanDuel points in 27 minutes the other night. 1.13 per minute on the season, 1.15 on DraftKings, where he didn't really come up for 7,700 against the lower cap, but with both forward position eligibility. 8.4% of winners, but just 2% of the top 150. Probably knocks him back against our public exposure. All right, there he is. Yeah, we're below the field on Siakam, but they're in the mid-single digits. So if you wanted to, double this, triple that, I think you're perfectly fine. Take him around the field, 10% ceiling maybe. I can see a little bit of upside for Pascal Siakam here though. DiVincenzo, plenty to do. Another Nick, 6,700. It's not quite the right price for the ceiling that we've seen out of Devo in this spot a few times, but that is also somewhat cooled. I don't mind if you wanted to take a few additional shares. We got him 7% in winners, 4% of the top 150. That's probably a little bit behind the field. So it's another spot where I think if you get him at the field, you're all right. Yeah, honestly, even if you get him a little ahead of the field, I think you're okay. Our win rate is slightly ahead of the field on him already. So if you wanted to go from 4 to 8, even 10, you're not that bad off. And you're setting a different foot than the field is. Yeah, I kind of don't dislike this. I could also see Devo just, kind of maybe getting into a three-point shooting contest with his old mates here. I don't totally hate that Devo option at 67. A hell of a three-point shooter. He did dip below 40%, but 39.6. Taking 8 a game, making 3 of them. Like I said, it cooled off a little bit from the peak over the last couple of months. Or month and a half, whatever it's been. At 67, though, that isn't bad. Jimmy Butler, 22% winner, 14.6% of our top 150 on FanDuel. Didn't go the last game. 1.13 per minute. Just basically is Jimmy Butler. Perfectly happy to have him. Perfectly happy to leave him to the public at 8,600, though. Especially if I'm building one lineup. Is Jimmy the star that gets into it? Not necessarily. I don't love that Miami-Philly game for really anything. Outside of like Jaime Jaquez, who we talked about before, nobody else really looking like a lot of guys are going to be popular from that game on FanDuel just for the shorter slate. DraftKings, you don't have to worry about it as much. But I don't love the Jimmy spot, and we're getting him below the field. Field is like right in line with our win rate, so we're already leaving a few shares to the field. I don't mind that much. At 8,000, I think this is fine if you wanted to take him up to the win rate. Even 10%, you're not far off the field on DraftKings. At 8,000, small forward only versus 86, both forward spots. He is coming up more on FanDuel, but again, shorter slate. I think I prefer him on DraftKings, oddly. A couple of differentiated pieces. Aaron Nesmith, 10% winner, but only 2% of them in our top 150 on FanDuel. 12% winner for Jaden McDaniels. Half that in terms of our exposure. Anthony Edwards we talked about already, but a 12% win rate and like half that in our exposure. Caleb Martin. All right, here's another piece from Miami on FanDuel. Well, that's weird. Is it? Oh, okay. No, it's not. I had the DraftKings screen still up, and he was below 1% ownership, and I was like, wow, that's an advantage. But unfortunately on FanDuel, he's pushing almost 20% popularity. We're still a little bit ahead of the field. 4 or 5 points ahead of the field here. Our win rate is higher than that, so I don't mind getting to that. So I think from Miami on the FanDuel slate, I kind of just prefer like the functional guys, like the Caleb Martins, the Jaime Jaquez's of the world, rather than going to Bam or Jimmy. Dunk Robinson's pulling a little bit of that as well. 8.1% of winners, 5% of the top 150. Between those guys, it's a tough call. I mean, given the way that it maths out, it's not a tough call. Save the $400 and take Caleb Martin. But in terms of which one of those guys has a better true ceiling, it's pretty close. There's Evan Fournier. So right now, again, for Fournier, not coming through. Gained 12 minutes in the fourth quarter because Jaden Ivey was in foul trouble and never came back. But I think we sacrificed those 12 minutes right back from the 31 that he played. Put up exactly 31.3 in 31.3. That's pretty amazing. This is like the coolest thing Evan Fournier's done in years. I don't think we get there unless we have news for Fontecchio, Cade, something that would drive his minutes into the 20s, at which point I do think on DraftKings, maybe you're getting there at 36. Probably still not at 4,000 with no flexibility on FanDuel. Unless I projected him for, into the 30s, then I think you could get there. But I think at most he gains 8 minutes or so. Might creep into playable territory on DraftKings. Just keep an eye on it. If you see this projection in later updates go above 17, you can jump on it. 16, 15, you're shaky. Anywhere below that, including where it is right now, just I would leave them to the side. Trey, I'm speaking to you specifically. Taylor Hendricks pulling a little bit of weight on FanDuel. 27.6% winner, 33% of the top 150. Didn't hit it all on DraftKings at 5,200 on the bigger slate. 4,500 though, pretty functional on FanDuel. Put up basically a point per minute the other day. He's been at 0.85 per minute for the season. And technically, I could have given him a little bit more. Oh no, it's the Minnesota game. That's right. That's why. Yeah. So I've got him under his rates, under the improved rate, and under his season long number because of the matchup against Minnesota. So even with that, he's shining through pretty strongly here. What's his popularity? This is also that late game on FanDuel, so I don't mind having some movable parts there. He's the most popular piece from the Utah side. Probably the most popular piece. No. Second most popular piece behind Slow-Mo in the entire game. I don't mind that. We're a little ahead of the field here. Our win rate is a little ahead of the field. I'm only talking about FanDuel because, again, he just didn't hit on DraftKings. So even with a little bit of a downgraded situational rate, I think your points per dollar still looks very strong at 4,500, and obviously our sim results look great. So yet another piece of value. I don't know who's going to fill out this unless we're just leaving like 10,000 on the table on FanDuel. Don't do that. Tobias Harris, reasonable enough. He missed the last game. That was a little bit of a twist. 16% winner, 10% of the top 150. If he goes at 7,000, both forward spots, there's plenty of upside. He's 0.97 per minute, for the season. 20% usage, and sees a little bit more than that situationally with all of their missing bodies. But again, he might be one of those missing bodies by the time we get to lock. Markkanen, if he plays, just looks like we just lost Tobias Harris. Yep, insane pump. Thank you, buddy. I actually, as I was saying that, it popped up on the screen that I had on. Trey likes Niang. Pritchard a bit too. Desunmu. What's up, Mamba? Just looking at Trey's last question. If it is that kind of a scenario, Trey, then, like I said, I do think there's a reasonable uptick. If you get a Cade Fontecchio out kind of a spot, it's just not my... Maybe it's a little bias about the player. I don't know. Not my favorite. And then Svi right now I have... We would obviously need to lose a body for Svi to gain relevance. In 12 minutes, I've got him under 10 fantasy points. I've got him under 9 fantasy points, if I'm being honest. I think we still need to drop either a Tatum or a Brown, and probably both for Svi to get to really relevant. Like they easily got the ability to just play that fairly tight. He did go 23 last night, but that was again with most of those guys sitting the entire fourth quarter. I guess if we did get him back to that kind of a territory, maybe. Let's see. He was in the first group off the bench, which is a good sign. Didn't play at all in the second quarter though. Played the entire fourth. So he was only at 10 and change minutes before he played the entire fourth quarter. He was in the first group of 3 off the bench. Him, Cornette, and Pritchard came off the bench for Brissett, Hauser, and Drew in the first group. But then he played a 5 minute and 28 stint, and then didn't play at all in the second quarter. Didn't play for the first half of the third quarter. Came back and played 5 minutes, and then played the entire fourth. I think I'm gonna stay at the. I need to lose another body for Svi to gain any kind of value, and even then, it might be a little bit thin. Like I'd still probably be looking for the lose a body and blow them out so he gets that fourth quarter run. So anytime, as I've talked about before, anytime we're compounding factors, compounding variables on top of our just knowns, right? Like we've got knowns, which are these guys' rates within a range for any given scenario. We've got unknowns, but projectable unknowns, which are the minutes. And then we've got unknown unknowns, which is somebody doesn't play, they're also blowing them out. So once you pile on all right, we have to have one of these guys not play for him to gain a 5 minute uptick, 6 minute uptick. And then on top of that, we have to have them blowing it out. So he picks up an additional 10, 12 minutes in the fourth quarter to really find value. Once you start projecting that stuff, you're really going off the path a little bit there. It can work out, but that becomes more gambling. That becomes more, throwing darts. Mamba Edwards has a great projection, but didn't come through the sims all that strong. He was a guy, I was saying, the way I put it basically was can easily go out there and bend the slate. But at price wasn't really crushing value. He landed in 11.8% or 11.5% of winners on FanDuel, but came up just 6% of the time against the popularity. And that's where he looks better for the 10-3 on the shorter slate. At 10,000 shooting guard small forward, you can see he came up sub 1 across the board on the DraftKings slate. But again, monster upside. 64.5 FanDuel points in 35 minutes the other day. Going up against a paper-thin Utah team. Absolutely, Edwards could go out there and just torch this team. It's just with almost a 50-point projection, he's just getting boxed out at price. There's just better options at price. So, yes, could break the slate. Must have, no. At least not how the Sims are saying it. I think we talked about all the forwards. Let's get over to centers. Coming up on 6 o'clock already. Going to be a lot of changes, I'm sure. Let's see what else came down, actually, in addition to the Harris news. As of 3 minutes ago, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both remain questionable. Bilal Coulibaly is out. It's Tuesday. Tyus Jones is also out Tuesday. Danny is also out Tuesday. Isaiah Thomas available to make his debut on Wednesday. How about that? Looks like no other news other than Tobias Harris. So let's breeze through centers here real quick. Once again, Precious Achiuwa looking like an absolute beast on the DraftKings slate with plenty to do. He's power forward eligible, so you can get him alongside any of these awesome-looking centers like Anthony Davis at 10-2. Again, AD among the stars. AD and Jason Tatum were the top 2 overall stars. We were getting a bit more exposure to Tatum. He was in like the 25% of our top 150, but AD had a slightly higher win rate. They both look great. I think AD looks like a potential dominant force on this slate for 10-2. At 11-4 on that late slate on FanDuel, he'll have his work cut out for him, but that still does give you 5+ points per dollar over there. So not bad if you're playing the 3-game late slate. You can see all 3 of the top overall center values are not available on FanDuel. Your top center option on FanDuel is Jared Allen. I think Jared Allen. This is an ugly FanDuel slate. Jesus. A lot of these shares probably land at power forward, and then we get like center only guys around these 3. That's 78% of our center ownership is going to Ayton, Turner, and Vooch. So it does look like most of this Allen probably actually falls at power forward. And then there's another 9% for Bam. So yeah, it's a day where you probably want to have one of the center-only centers on FanDuel at center. Given 88% share now in our top 150 lineups are going to Ayton, Turner, Vooch, or Bam. Among those guys, Vooch is looking like the strongest candidate. 19% win rate. We got him 36% of the time. Head-to-head matchup with Ayton, who's been looking strong of late. 1.09 per minute for the season, but his recent run has been His recent run has been significantly higher. I don't have the number. I got to start. You know what I need to do? That's a really good idea, actually. When I put these tweaks in, for my own references on the show, now that we're in mid-March, I should have just been noting, like as I'm looking at Wowie, the rate that I'm working off of instead of just trying to remember it. Like, why wouldn't I have been doing that all season long? Stupid. Anyway, I've got him at 1.24 for tonight, Ayton, which is hovering in the territory of where he's been. So the appreciable uptick anyway is accounted for Ayton here. At 8,200, he definitely looks playable on FanDuel. 13.9% winner, but I like Vooch a little bit better given the slightly higher numbers. I definitely think you can go to Miles Turner, but you're throwing him up against Cleveland there. These 2 guys in a head-to-head, and then these 2 guys in a head-to-head. You've got Gobert going up against nothing, but he's just coming through at 4.7% winner, 3.3% of the top 150 on FanDuel. Gobert on DraftKings is interesting. At 7,900, he only landed in about 7% of winners, but we got him 16% of the time in the top 150. And that's a handful of points ahead of his projected popularity. Obviously, if you get no Rudy Gobert, you've got Gobert, Kyle Anderson, and Monte Morris all still questionable here. If we got no Gobert, we've also got Cat still out. We see the uptick for Nas. That becomes a play again. Although Nas is, 73 on DraftKings now? And 78 on FanDuel. So a lot of his former, oh my God, Nas is stepping into starting minutes is just kind of washed away by the way the slates price him now. It's just kind of accounting for his potential upside. You can see him right here. At his usual price, usual minutes, he gets just nothing. But on the day where you get him at 35 minutes, he gives you 55 FanDuel points. He's priced, is still effectively for that, but it's not the, $5,000 Nas opportunity. It's not it wouldn't send him into the, 80-90% range. He would just be a very good option on this slate, and one that you would probably want to have. So bonus on DraftKings, just giving you mid-single digits at 10.5. AD, obviously, for 300 less, looking quite a bit better. Sabonis has been very, very good all season. 1.42. I mean, the points per minute is right in line. The overall projection is off by, 2 points between them, 2.5 points between them. You absolutely could see Sabonis succeed. Game environment-wise, that Memphis game could get ugly. 10.5 point spread, 221.5 point total. So we're dealing with a lower total, a bigger spread, a really ugly Memphis team on the other side. I just kind of like the spot. I guess maybe I'm giving the Hawks a little bit of credit. Even still no Trey for the Hawks, but giving them maybe a little bit of credit to be able to hang with the Lakers a little bit more. So between the two, I like the AD spot a little bit better for the last, and it mass out nicely. Ayton on DraftKings, by the way, landed in 22% of the top 150 and 10% of winners. That put us ahead of the field on Ayton on DK. 8,200, pretty solid price for him. Between him and Vooch, we're definitely getting more Ayton on the DraftKings slate. More Vooch on FanDuel, more Ayton on DraftKings between the two of those guys. Allen and Turner came up exactly the same on DraftKings. Allen only a center on the DK slate, so you don't have his power forward flex that you do over here, which got him to us more. Jalen Duren, if you're looking for a total curveball, really on either site, 7,400 center only on FanDuel, 6% winner, just 1% of our top 150 because he's getting boxed out by all these guys. On DraftKings for 7,000, we got to him 4.6% of the time in winners, just 2% of the top 150 because, again, just getting boxed out by all those guys. We know that Jalen Duren in the right spot has 50-plus point upside. This is not to say by any means that Detroit is in a good situation against Boston today, but at least he's going up against their third-line bigs. So there is that. Well, actually, no, Porzingis is back today. I forgot about that part. I still think there's a little bit of sneaky potential around Jalen Duren. Not a priority. Like if you're looking to save money at center on FanDuel, just go to Miles Turner for 400 less. DraftKings, same thing. 300 less. But he's potentially sneaky. Joker, stop licking your paw. Dog's right down here licking his paw, and all I hear is like, which I've now subjected all my viewers to. Doesn't look like there's anything really strong that's differentiated across sites. 4% for John Collins on FanDuel and winners, 5% for Isaiah Stewart. Probably all coming at the power forward, and we didn't get to them at all in the top 150. So again, just two quality players that just get boxed out by better options. Clint Capella didn't really hit the board on DraftKings. Kessler didn't really hit the board at all. Bam is a minor option on DraftKings. Doesn't look good at all. 1% winner, 0.67% of the top 150. Same for KP, 7,800. Not really that relevant. I could see either one of those guys having a decent day. Draymond as well at 6,600. Draymond's going to have his work cut out for him going up against those Knicks, though. I could see Tillman sneaking into a few more shares, a few more minutes at 3,800. Center only is interesting. I think we would still probably just have these guys more coming up, even if Tillman gained a little bit of ground. We'd probably still get to these guys and then just take our value out of the other position still. Anyway, let's 6 o'clock. Let's jump real quick over to Ace Mind. These are your ugly DK lineups for that $4 100K to first. I don't know. You find a theme. Here's some George Niang for Trey. Trey's got to like the looks of that. All right. A lot of Sam Merrill coming up. A lot of Precious, which we were expecting. It's really mixed bag today, though. At the center spot, a lot of Gobert and Ayton. Here's some AD. So this is what I was looking at the beginning of the show. Right, AD for all as much as we got to him. This top group of the top of our lineups, he didn't come up quite as much. You got to scroll down a little bit before you start seeing him. And then Tatum was same thing. You got a first one here. You scroll down and get a little bit more of them. We weren't getting them together all that much. I'm sure there's a couple in here where they're together. But that's even on this slate, even on this DraftKings slate with all these options and all this value, or all this mid value anyway. Still a little bit tight. But we are getting a fair amount of constructions with, this one's Tatum, Ayton, Io. And then Slow-Mo, Barnes. LeVert was a good piece today. Merrill, TJ McConnell, and good points per minute, but comes out of the mid. Io, Maxey, value, Gobert, Fox. It looks fairly spendy at point between our Foxes, our Cunninghams, our Maxies. Shooting guard outside of the Jaylen Brown and the odd Maxey share there. Looks a lot like Sam Merrill and some value-based options. At small forward, definitely taking some value. Looks like a good amount of Cleveland value coming through there. Alexander Walker, who I don't love. Precious in a lot of the power forward shares. Spendy enough at center. Whatever you didn't do over here at the point, you probably drop into your guard spot. And then, whatever you didn't do small forward-wise, it looks like mostly those options here. But we're getting some LeBron, some Precious, some McKez. And then util is kind of mixed, as it should be. If I had to lean for util, I'd say it's a little bit more value-oriented. But it all depends on, who you clicked where. I don't love the look of these lineups, I gotta say, just on the surface. But maybe this will be more encouraging. Top one's bringing you back 188 against your 4. That's not bad with a 0.15% win result against a 89,000 entry field. We take a dip from that top one by a bunch of money, hit another plateau here before we dip again. That top lineup, Fox, Merrill, Okoro, Precious, Gobert, Burks, LeVert, Maxey. I gotta say, I do not love that lineup. Spent 49.9, basically all your money. Did, again, have very strong results. Feels shaky, though. Tatum's out. Righto. All right. So, yeah, Jaylen Brown's going to shoot up. Derek White's going to shoot up. Zinger's there, so Zinger probably gets a little bit of a bump. And then we'll see what happens down the board with the remaining pieces and parts. Minutes-wise, I've already got Jaylen at 35, Derek White at 36. So there's going to be a lot of minutes to distribute down the board here. And we've already got no Hauser, no Horford, no Drew. Is Keta available? Just thinking in terms of what bodies. This is probably going to be some, in terms of who will land minutes, like Tillman and Brissett will pick up a little. Presumably a couple, at least for Svi over where I've got him now. There's going to be a lot. I had Tatum at 36 minutes, so that's a lot of minutes to redistribute. Fontecchio also out. Cade also out. Jaylen will play. Porzingis will play. Tatum out. Okay. Yeah, so Trey, you might be able to take either of those value plays. You might have your Fournier value just enough, and you might have your Svi value just enough. I don't know that I would still necessarily go those routes, but keep an eye on them at least. That'll be fun. All right, real quick, FanDuel. I told you the show was going to be completely irrelevant by the time it ended. Hopefully we at least cover some of those bases. FanDuel, Pritchard, Banton, as discussed. Caruso, I like the Io spot. There's a Caruso, Banton, Io, Banton, Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, Banton, Caruso, Jaylen Brown. County George I don't love. It's got Tatum in it. On FanDuel, you can see illustrated in front of you exactly what I was talking about with the center only guys are getting the center shares, and then we get a lot of our Jared Allen, but we get him at power forward. And I think that'll only be even stronger. Like this Jared Allen show will probably just land there now because Tatum's not there. We'll probably get to a little bit more DeMar DeRozan just by virtue of having money to spend on quality players. Jimmy might also hit that a little bit in terms of like guys not on the Celtics that could be impacted by how Tatum's absence hits the slate, which is something that's under discussed a lot of the time. Like, yeah, big impact for the Celtics, and we'll find it and it'll project out great. But a lot of times those guys aren't like direct 1-for-1 replacements where a DeMar DeRozan positionally is functionally the same at a lower price with not nearly the upward momentum that Tatum had on the slate. But once Tatum comes off, it creates a vacuum, and these guys, something has to fill that spot. So we'll probably see some additional shares of some of those guys. Tobias is also off the slate. That'll have a little impact like that too. None of this is relevant anymore. Still like Io. Still like Banton. Still like Caruso. Sammy Merrill if you need him. Jaime Jaquez if you need him. It's just going to get very Starsy Scrubsy. Top lineup on FanDuel used to be Pritchard, Banton, Caruso, Sexton, Jaquez, Slow-Mo, Allen, Tatum, Ayton, which I actually like quite a bit. Left 200 on the board. I could probably upgrade a spot for that and had a pretty decent return. This was against the $5, by the way, so we had a little bit of slate size to work with. So bringing back 126 against your 5 isn't bad. But again, he's not here anymore, and it's a completely different slate. With that in mind, gang, I got some updating to do. 6:10 updates will be available 10-15 minutes from now. Appreciate everybody hanging out all this time. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Jump into the Discord if you haven't already. Jimmy's out too? When did that happen? When did that happen? You sure about that? Oh, interesting. 12 minutes ago per labs. Jimmy Butler out on Monday. I don't think Underdog has reported that yet. Tatum, Tobias, Koulibaly. All right, yet another twist. Yep, love the Kez spot. That probably does give a little bit of a push to Bam. Probably it'll be less relevant on DraftKings than it is on FanDuel. Probably gets him into a few more lineups on the FanDuel slate. And then has a downward uptick for a downward uptick. Woo, that's a weird phrase to end a show on. It'll have an uptick for guys like a Kez, Dunk Robinson, et cetera, from further down the board. Caleb Martin. Whew, fun one. All right, I got a lot of work to do. Keep an eye on the site. Things are going to change. With that in mind, good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll be back tomorrow for more of the same. Later, gang.